Hello, EnderSword here again. We are looking at a replay today from the Bronze League featuring our Protoss, dimpoTERROR, who we'll be focusing on, and his opponent, Yo, the Zerg player over here in the 9 o'clock position. What we're going to be focusing on for the Protoss player today are 3 Ps. We're going to look at probe production, and the impact of simply not making enough of them during the game and the economic differences that can result from that. We're going to be looking at passivity, just being too passive in a game, and there is a distinct difference between being passive and being defensive. And we're also going to look at having an overall plan to what you're doing, to have a logical coherence to the things you build and the actions that you take, and whether different things that you do actually work well together. So to start off the action, we've got a pylon going down in a place that you'd pretty much expect it versus a Zerg player. In PvZ, you often want to wall off the front with 2 buildings, leaving a spot for a zealot. That prevents early Zerg rushes and so forth. We get early drone harassment here. It's important to note, for players that don't know, the probe loses this fight even if you both start attacking at the same time. The drone will actually get regeneration during the fight that will help keep it alive. The Protoss shields do regenerate, but they do not regenerate in combat. They only regenerate out of combat. So when you both start off with 40 hit points and do the same amount of damage, but the drone gets to add back 3 hit points during the fight, then he's going to have 1 hit left at the end, even if you both hit each other at the exact same time. So just beware that when that situation occurs, you will lose that fight. These buildings go down a bit late. He had the money to put these down a lot earlier. Remember that that's also the side effect of having that drone harassment. It's there to delay you. That's the entire point behind it, is to make you late. Try not to let it make you late. If it's blocking right here and you want your building there, put it right here. Just move to the other spot. Try and get rid of it as fast as possible so that you continue doing whatever you're doing. Now, we did see the op for the forge, which leads to these cannons going down, again in a very suspect location. When you're doing cannons defensively, it's still better to create a wall situation with your heavier buildings. Look at these, having 500 shields, 500 health, 400 shields, 400 health, versus 150, 150 once they're constructed. These are going to hold a frontal attack a lot better, and you would be better served putting your cannons behind them, both because then Zerglings can't get a good surround on them, and so that roaches can't attack them from the low ground. You want to make them come up that choke. You want to make them go through the buildings, like take advantage of the range that you have on them, and don't leave your cannons out on the open where they can actually go down very quickly. Here too, even with the zealot out, this is still a very open path. If there were to be a bunch of Zerglings coming out, they could just run by these. There's nothing preventing an army from going in and attacking this mineral line, even though some people would look at this and say, oh, that's pretty well defended. It's not a wall. There's nothing preventing someone from not zigzagging through there. It's going to hit a few Zerglings on the way, but if 15 come through, 9 are going to make it pretty much. So it's not a good idea to have things in that formation. This cybernetics core goes down again very late. That gateway's been down for a long time. You want that cybernetics core to be there so that you can actually start on warp gate technology. Instead, we've got it going down at a time that warp gate technology is often done. You usually want that warp gate done by about 6 minutes, if not earlier, but here we are still making the core, so it's going to add a lot of time to what he's doing. In terms of just general probe count, as of about 2 minutes ago, he stopped making probes. If we check out the unit counting tab, probes are steady at 16, while the drones will continue to rise, currently at 34. This nexus has been completely silent for a while, and during the entire course of the rest of the game, it's actually only going to make 3 more probes. in total. That's simply not anywhere near enough, even for one base, let alone if he was planning to expand to a natural in the future. You need those probes to be coming out pretty much constantly throughout the entire game. You can't afford to get this far down in your economy. The drones are simply going to be providing twice as much money to the player, and it's impossible to surmount that sort of economic imbalance. We've got Warp Gate being chronoed out now, obviously trying to turn these into Warp Gates in the near future. Very small army here. So this is where we get into passive versus defensive. A lot of people think of cannons as, oh, okay, they're defending me for now, so it's kind of buying me time. But if you don't have an answer for buying you time for what, then it's probably not a good idea. For Warp Gate technology, 4 gates with Warp Gate technology can be done and ready to hit you at about 6 minutes and 20 seconds. This delays that technology by about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, wastes a lot of money, and sure, it's a bit defensive, although placed pretty wrong, but it does somewhat defend you, but then it completely destroys the timing of what you were going to do here. Now, if you start to get a good army out of these Warp Gates, which he doesn't even because he doesn't have enough resources to actually really produce much out of them, the army's going to be a lot smaller because you're now missing about 5 warp-ins worth of stuff because you've delayed it for 2.5 minutes. It's simply not a good plan to cannon up and then do something that you could have done without cannoning. You'll often see, you've probably all run into something on the ladder where a Protoss will cannon in and then rush to Dark Templars, or rush to Void Rays, or rush to Quick Colossus. So they're being defensive up front with these so that they don't have to build as big an army, and they can dump the resources and all their gas into teching up to something else. By doing this, he's not taking advantage of the fact that this buys him some time. Instead, this army is just smaller than it should be. These start to become useless, and in the meantime, the Zerg has not had to defend himself. He was up to 30-something drones before he ever started making these roaches. And you just can't leave him in that position. You have to scare the Zerg. You have to make it so that they actually have to defend themselves. If we look now at this formation of roaches and spine crawlers has only occurred because he started to see that this army was here. If we actually rewind a little back to, say, the 7-minute mark, none of that was here. The entire army only consisted of 7 Zerglings. At the 8-minute mark, there were only 3 Zerglings on the map. Again, there's no need to defend himself at this point in the game because the Protoss simply was not pressuring, was not providing a threat. You don't always have to have an attack in what you're doing, but you have to have some sort of threat. The Zerg has to be worried about what you can do. And we do see actually at this moment, at the 8:30 mark, he was worried that maybe DTs or Void Rays were going to come out, so he put down Spore Crawlers. The Zerg was adequately defended against what the Protoss could have, but he knew that the Protoss could not have an army right now, so he didn't defend against it until we go back to our round where we were. And you've got this down. Only in response to the Protoss building an army did the Zerg build one. So you have to be provoking the Zerg. You have to make them choose to turn these larvae into a military force, or else they're just not going to do it. So with this army finally moving out and finally being present on the map, it's exactly what the Zerg did, but by then the economies were just so different that this occurs and there's an absolutely overwhelming force here. There's nothing the Protoss army can do about this. It's just too small at this moment in time. The economy is just too far behind and really from the entire game, the Protoss is losing, but that's pretty much the decisive blow. 17 supply now to 116, all 17 of those being the 17 probes he made during the game versus the 54 drones. We do see some tech start to go down. Again, this is now about 6-7 minutes late for something he should be doing. If you're going to cannon in, again, he's adding more of these, now creating a complete wall off. At this point in the game, these are just useless. That would go down very quickly. We've got 31 roaches on the map. That would just drop. dimpoTERROR does realize that the game is over, but he's kind of going to play it out a little bit. I think he wants to get these void rays out there, but this is just a result of not putting as much into your economy. If we look at the spending, the Protoss has spent 2,150 minerals on his economy, whereas the Zerg has spent 7,750, over triple what the Protoss has done. You've got 4 hatcheries, 4 on the way now. You've got full saturation at multiple bases. This is just absolutely insurmountable, and it didn't have to be. There was nothing the Zerg did to poke at the Protoss or throw him off his game. This was completely his decision. He decided to be very passive. He decided to not build an army. He decided to not build probes. He decided not to expand. The Zerg never put any pressure on him. The Zerg didn't have any sort of military until about the 10-minute mark in this game. The Protoss could have done whatever he wanted up until that point, but he didn't take advantage of that. And so we're in this situation where he's desperately going towards void rays, randomly putting down a robotics facility, and it's all the result of this very, very passive opening. When the Zerg sees this, the Zerg immediately knew, okay, there's 3 cannons, he can't come get me. And because he can't come get me, I can take this base and I can build nothing but drones for a while. And so that's exactly what he did. This is not the result of the Zerg taking some clever tech path. Everything's very basic. He just made roaches. He's now going to try and end this game in a little bit of style. He could just completely blow down this wall. Don't have any misconceptions about that. This would decimate everything here. But I guess he just wanted a little flair to his ending, and so that'll come up shortly. But again, if you're this Protoss player, you have to recognize the signals you're sending by doing this, by doing that cannon. You're slowing everything that you're doing down, and you're telling the Zerg around you, or if it was Terran, doesn't matter who it was, you're telling the people around you, you can do whatever you want. I can't come and get you right now. As long as you prepare later on for what's going to come out of here later on, then you're fine. It's not that I'm saying it's always a bad idea to cannon defend yourself. There are instances where it's okay, but you have to have a reason you're doing it. It has to be so that you can tech to something, so that you can fast expand, so that you can do something. In this case, we just didn't see anything done, and as a result, he's going to get roaches dropped all over his 17 probes, and that's pretty much the end of that. Even with 5 void rays out now, they so insurmountable, he literally can't stop this in time before it would destroy his entire base. It's just absolutely irrelevant. So to recap, and I know a lot of this game has been me recapping, probes were where he lost. When he didn't make more probes, that was pretty much it, no matter what he did. He was also too passive, not defensive. There's a difference between passive and defensive, and he was passive, and he did not have a plan. There was no plan of attack. There was no plan to transition. There was no plan to tech. There was never a plan to attack in any way, and that's what leads to this loss here. Thanks for watching. I'll try and add a silver and gold video tonight, and check those out.